Hello everyone. Today we will have two interesting stories. Before we get to that, I want to ask you to subscribe, like, and be sure to write comments in order to participate in the development of the community. Write how to improve my community, current topics in the stories you are interested in, and much more. I read and listen to all the comments. People write me stories by mail from different countries. There are problems with translation. I apologize for this. I will work on it and try to fix these errors. I want to thank everyone for their support and the people who wrote to me by mail, broadcast news stories. New videos on my channel are published every 2 days at 7 p.m. Don't forget to put a bell in order not to miss new videos. And now, let's go. Hello, I want to tell you my story. Emily came to my city for work. We met at a cafe. I was introduced to Emily by my friend's girlfriend. They worked together at the company. My friend's girlfriend was with Emily almost everywhere, and on this beautiful evening, she knew that I would be at the cafe. She took Emily with her on purpose to introduce us. As a result, we met and I really liked Emily. Since that evening, we have hardly parted. We went to cafes, clubs, museums, cinemas, and so on. I am 27 years old and Emily is 20 years old, and Emily is 20 years old. 8 months later, I asked Emily to marry me, and she agreed. It happened in February, and in June, we got married. We lived in a big city, so life wasn't cheap. That's why Emily and I took our time with the baby. We decided to arrange our lives first. As a result, it took 7 years to arrange our lives. I was already starting to think about starting a conversation about conceiving a child. I began to notice a chill in our relationship. There's a lot less sex. My wife has some urgent business at work. She had to work late and on weekends. She said that employees were being sent home because of the virus. Therefore, there's often a blockage at work. That you have to work very hard, and it is simply impossible to deal with clients and documentation in one shift. I noticed that my wife began to dress for work as for a holiday. Of course, I had my suspicions. We began to communicate very rarely with friends. We stopped spending time together. As disgusting as it sounds, I decided to trace my wife. I had to try very hard because I constantly lost sight of her, and the result of the surveillance ended there. But I finally managed to track her down. I knew the house my wife visited, but the apartment in which she spent time was not tracked down the first time. But I managed to recognize this apartment at the next time when my wife left for work. I stood and thought for a long time in front of the door of this apartment. Press the bell button or not. Possible a work colleague lives in this apartment with whom they are really doing business about work. I've been putting my thoughts in order for a long time. To be precise, within 30 minutes. But something inside me said, call. As a result, I pressed the doorbell button. The door did not open immediately. The front door was opened by a guy with a naked torso about my age. His body was covered with tattoos. He was taller than me and broader in the shoulders. He asked rudely, "What do you need?" At that moment, the door of a room opened and my wife appeared in a men's shirt. When she saw me, she was taken aback for a few seconds. Then she quickly ran back into the room and tightly closed the door behind her. At that moment, I told this guy that my wife was at his house. He told me that he was alone in the apartment and I was mistaken. I called my wife's name loudly several times. Naturally, I didn't hear anything in response. I asked this guy to let me in. Of course, he refused me, and then I tried to break into the apartment by force. There was a scuffle between us. He turned out to be physically stronger and broke my eyebrow. Blood flooded my eyes and I couldn't see anything. I had to give up trying to break into the apartment. As I was leaving, I shouted that a serious conversation was waiting for my wife at home. I called a taxi and went to the hospital. I even had to get a couple of stitches. When I got home, I found her at home. When my wife saw me, she made a face full of horror and asked what happened. "Who beat you up?" She said she asked her boss to go home early and wanted to surprise me, so she bought champagne. But it turned out the opposite, and I prepared a surprise. When I asked her, why did she think that someone had beaten me? Because I could have fallen or had an accident. She replied that I was very careful and it couldn't happen. In general, my wife denied everything and made a fool of me. She was throwing tantrums and screaming. She said that she was not cheating on me and had not been in any apartment with another man. She said I was paranoid and I imagined it all. She immediately forgot about my injury. In a rage, I picked up the phone and started calling my wife at work. I was answered by a guard who said that today was everyone's day off. There was no one else in the building except him for the whole day. My wife, confused, told me that she went to the deputy director's house and they worked for her. How is that? Didn't you say you were going to the office? Give me the phone number of the deputy director and I'll call her. To which my wife told me that the deputy director does not like being bothered by the husbands of the employees. As it turned out later, the deputy director was vacationing in Florida at that time. As a result, my wife never confessed. We got divorced in May of this year, and I don't even know what my wife was missing. As it seemed to me, everything was fine with us. As a result, I live for my own pleasure. I haven't found a new girl yet, but it's a matter of time. This is the end of the first story, but before we move on to the opinion of the author of the channel, there will be one more short story. Let's go. I've been chasing her for 2 years. At the same time, I didn't give a damn about her boyfriends. I was very much in love. I've been delivering flowers to her at work and home. And now, 2 years later, I have achieved what I wanted. She finally paid attention to me. Everything happened very quickly. A 6-month affair and immediately a wedding. There was no limit to my happiness. She was very beautiful. As she walked down the street, almost no man took his eyes off her. We lived together for 2 years. I can't say she's a bad housekeeper. My house was always clean, but there were problems with food. No, she cooked very well. But because of her busy schedule, she just didn't have time to cook dinner. Sometimes I had to cook dinner. Sometimes I had to cook. My wife did not give any reason for suspicion. In general, we lived very well and did not swear much. There were minor quarrels between us that quickly ended in reconciliation. One day we started talking about a child. We both agreed and started to conceive. 3 months later, my wife became pregnant. I was as happy as a child. After 15 weeks, the doctor said that we would have a boy. The son was born strong and healthy. There was no limit to my joy. I was buying everything I needed for a small child. But of course, I also bought toys. Although some of the kids were intended for children 5 years old, I didn't pay attention to it. I didn't care. I was just really glad. The boy grew up mobile, ate and slept well, and most importantly, cried a little. When he first started crawling, I cried with emotion. When my son started saying his first words, I happily gave my wife a car and gold jewelry. After that, the first steps in the first 𝐂𝐻𝐿 began. When my son turned 3, my wife said that she was not going to stay at home anymore. She wanted to go to work. We sent our son to kindergarten, and my wife and I started working days. A year later, my wife got pregnant again. We decided that we could use a second child. After 14 weeks, the doctor said that there would be a girl. And again, my joy knew no bounds. I'm going to have a son and a daughter. What could be more beautiful in this life? This time, I bought my wife a new car, even though it hit our budget. But if you tighten your belts a little, you can live. My daughter started walking when everything happened. The wife asked permission to go to a friend's cottage. It happened sometimes before when we had one child. Of course, I trusted my wife and let her go. I thought that the girl needed to unwind and take a break from home life and children. She was returning home in her car and lost control. As a result, my wife died. I got depressed. A month later, a gray-haired man of about 50 came to my house and said that he would not leave his children to me. As it turned out, it was my wife's lover. He was a very powerful man. The conversation with him was very short. I kicked him out and closed the door in his face. After a while, I received a subpoena. We did a DNA test. This man had no children of his own. His relationship with my wife began before our wedding and continued throughout our family life. The DNA test showed that the children are not mine. I retested the test, but it didn't help. I'm sitting at the table with a bottle of whiskey. I am depressed and I cannot understand how this could happen and how this could happen. I decided to tell you my story so that you would be more careful in this life. If you like the story, give a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so as not to miss new videos. Now let's move on to the opinion of the author of the channel. The opinion of the author of the channel. According to tradition, I want to wish strength and patience to our heroes. Thank God that in the first story, the guy did not fall for his wife's deception. Some people psychologically do not want to believe in what happened and close their eyes. That's why such idiotic feminine excuses work. You did well to decide to get a divorce. This is the right decision. Live and don't look back. I think you'll find a decent replacement. About the second story, I'll say this. I think you should see a psychologist. You've been under a lot of stress. Turn to your family for support and move forward. Alcohol is not the way out. I can say that anything that doesn't happen can be experienced, and you can get over it. The main thing is not to give up. If you have watched to the end, I want to say thank you very much. I love you all. Thank you for joining me on this exciting journey of love, betrayal, and redemption. I appreciate your support and encourage you to subscribe, like, and share this story. Your participation and feedback are invaluable for shaping our content and promoting mutual understanding and community growth. Until we meet again.